The material that I'll be talking about is Edward Muybridge's photographic work, specifically the images in his book titled The Attitudes of Animals in Motion. And you most likely know it from these images of horses moving in sequence, like a stop motion, like this one. Yeah, maybe at the end of the talk it will get more clear how I got to these images, but what's important is that I wanted to look closely not only on the images themselves, but on the studio setting or on the structure that made these images possible. And I'm not looking at these images as an art historian, very, very far from that. But I try to place some of my own past works in the same logic of the studio setting that these images were made. Because I'm, in general, I'm very interested in images and ideas of movement and shape, and especially how bodies move in time and space. So I believe there's something about the logic behind Muybridge's photographic series that is such a foundation for the image of the body and notions of time and space in the West that I was interested in placing my own body and work in confrontation with it. So I'll read a text I've been working on here at the Infinite, which I started writing when I found out that one of the first horses that Muybridge photographed was called Occident, which means West or the opposite of Orient. And here running on this screen, there's just some images of my own studio in Berlin. So here it is. The impression of movement. Occident ambles from the first shot to the second. There's a person mounted on its back. They wear a hat seemingly still from shot to shot, defined only by their silhouette. In the following pages of the book, we see Occident walking, ambling on a single foot, cantering, racking, trotting, galloping, leaping, performing an irregular gait, backing. It's all recorded by 24 cameras, each separated by 12 inches. Occident is always photographed full body in a profile, high contrast, its right side to the cameras. Photographing Occident, looking at the apparent motion of its legs between images, the shadows defining its muscles, its tail slightly different in every scene, does not make us to get to know Occident. Occident is a horse, and I heard once that if you spot a wild animal in nature, it's most likely that that animal has already spotted you multiple times earlier. But looking closer at Muybridge's images, the horses are wearing blinders. Occident is led through a straight path divided and numbered into 24 sections in front of a white background and white floor. Occident is blinded from the camera's gaze. I've been thinking a lot about Occident. How it moves, where does it go? How it ambles, canters, trots, leaps. I've been also looking for another kind of image of Occident. Maybe from other sides, details, its sounds, its mistakes, its irreverences, its reluctance to follow the path of the animal's emotion, perhaps its past, before it was brought to the stage. I wonder if before it was named Occident, was it then freer, wilder, happier? Or what happened to Occident after the photos were taken, when no one watched it anymore? Was it then freer, wilder, happier? I don't know how is the best way to think about Occident, but perhaps that's the wrong question. In fact, I realize now I'm not even sure of where I am in relation to Occident. Where's my body? Where's my gaze? Looking at images of Occident makes me feel at times as if it distanced itself from me. But Occident is not moving. It is always in the center of the image. We just may have an impression of movement between these little rounded, edged, squared frames on the page. But the distancing between me and Occident is not as if it is running away from me. Occident, in fact, never looked at me because I see it from its side. I am behind the cameras, behind the blinders, behind the book, looking. But sometimes when I look closer, I see only a horse, and I have the impression that I am trotting with Occident. I am also in front of the cameras. I'm in the picture. I remember I was also once named Occident. I'm in Occident stage, every step a camera, 24 cameras every 12 inches, like the hours in a day, the months in a year, offering me the impression of movement, visa after visa, passport, diploma, work, exhibition, taxes, gym, elections, groceries, Occident hauling, walking, ambling on a single foot, cantering, racking, trotting, galloping, leaping, irregular gait, backing. How can one move in Occident's path? Is Occident the name of the horse on that stage? Is Occident the stage? Is Occident the man that built it? Is Occident the intentions behind this photographic set? Is Occident just a name? Edward Muybridge's images our hearts have missed during one's lifetime. A few months ago, I looked at his book so I could check if the images of those moving horses I had in my head were actually something I had seen, or if at this point I was just imagining it. The gravity around these images is so strong. But as I look at the pages of the book in my hands, I see more than the horse. There are other animals performing different tasks, in fact, all moving from the left to the right side of the page, moving in a variety of motions. And towards the end of the book, there's a section portraying humans as well, at first moving but then rather still. Those are titled posturing. They are mostly muscled male athletes showing their bodies. I obviously stopped. I've been trying to see beauty in those poses. It's easy. Desire has always interrupted me. The silhouette, the muscles offering a sense of strength and movement, like the man that stopped my gaze, like the boy in my school that made me look, as if I too had 24 cameras at him, capturing every movement of his back, his curly hair, the diffidence in his eyes. When I think about Muybridge apparatus in relation to my gaze towards that boy, it feels like the camera is a sad little device. I cannot fall in love with the images of Occident. I was better at capturing the image of that boy in my high school class than any image that Muybridge could ever make. But there's something about the images of the male body in his book that stops me still. They break the sequence. Desire comes into play. Memory, perhaps. The desire that plays on the same stage that Occident trotted. In 2015, as I moved to Berlin, I was invited to make a new work for an exhibition at the Schwules Museum, or Gay Museum of Berlin. The museum hosts one of the biggest queer archives worldwide with about 1,500,000 items associated with LGBTIQ+ history and culture in Germany. There is go through images and images of queer life in Europe from the past century. The different movements of different groups and individuals that led to the existence of this very museum of queer life. There was a sense of movement, yes, the impression of movement perhaps, of a step in history leading to the next, of resistance to motion, or sometimes of a backwards movement. But the most imposing type of movement in that archive for me was the one between my own body and the material I was encountering. Just like the movement between me and the image of Occident the horse. While it was impossible for me to disregard the gravity pulling me towards recognizing this queer European history as part of my own as a gay man living in Germany, there was also a counter movement, a type of rejection of the same history towards the representation of my own body and my own histories that the archive didn't see. As if the archive itself was wearing blinders, and while I could see it moving, they could not see me looking. A similar complicated play of association, dissociation that I had towards Occident the horse. After a year working to come up with the work for this exhibition, I ended up making my first ceramic tile mural, based on a small pamphlet in the archives in Portuguese, telling the story of the possible first gay martyr of Brazil, a Tupinambá person killed by the French in the beginning of the 17th century. Their name was Tibira do Maranhão, and for some reason, I had the feeling that Chibita's placement in the archive had similar questions of my own, or perhaps even of Oxen the horse, which is, where are we? When I think now of my presence in the basement of the Gay Museum of Berlin and all the other archives I have been in the past years in Europe, walking along their perfectly aligned shelves, parallel lines of historical material, numbered, distanced from each other so that a body can amble along the years of history, I remember of Occident ambling in front of 24 cameras, separated by 12 inches, along the parallel markings on the floor. In 2021, 5 years later, another curator brought me to the same archive to show me his research on the first gay periodical published in Germany, hoping that this would spark a new work from me for a show he was curating at the time. A similar process of dissociation happened again when I saw the material. We spent the whole day flipping through the images, and the more I looked, the more I was distancing myself from the material. We were looking at the archives of the magazine called Der Eigene. This magazine seeks to draw continuity between European homosexuality of the late 19th century with homosexual culture of ancient Greece. Again, white sculpturesque muscled bodies as the image of gay desire. Not much different from the athletes in Muybridge's book, photographed in the same path that Oxen was photographed. It's not surprising then that the owner of the magazine ended up being closely related to racist and fascist ideals of the time, leading to connections with Hitler's Germany, through shared ideas towards the purity of a body. But one of the images in the magazine did draw my attention, or spoke directly to my personal experience within German gay circles. That was the painting of a brown boy by the owner of the magazine himself, in which he titled Race and Beauty. The weight of seeing these two words together, race and beauty, under this image, spoke too close to my own experience in gay bars in Berlin, where desire very often is directed towards me, connected to ideas of my own mixed race. I made these two paintings on tiles of me holding the image of the book in the archive and mirrored them, thinking of the possibility of ever separating ideas of race and beauty. The first pages in Muybridge's book is what really drew my attention. First, we see a location, California, Palo Alto, a landscape, the same landscape where the Silicon Valley is today. Then we see images of the cameras he used with the special shutter system he developed. Muybridge managed to split the second, fragment time, the body, and Occident. In the following pages, we see a group of men preparing the set. It consists of what it seems to be a big white background, like what we are used to see today in photo studios, but very large, probably made of wood. The entire site is outdoors. In front of the background, there's a wooden path, and in front of it, numbers on the floor, followed by lines that trace a connection between the numbers towards a small wooden construction, apparently the same width of the white background, parallel to it. In this wooden structure, there is a slit running across its entire length, hosting 24 versions of the camera we saw in the first pages of the book. The two distinct moments at the Gay Museum in Berlin I spoke about came back to me as I looked at these background images and the splitting of the body in 24 cameras. Both formats I have found in my work to deal with the material I encountered in the museum involved using the medium of ceramic tiling as a tool for fragmenting the image, as if the slicing of these materials might help me to see something I cannot see, to open a new possibility within these histories, perhaps the possibility then of a body that cannot fully exist within these spaces. I use this kind of logic in different works since then in order to look at or perhaps even retrace some historical materials I encountered in different works. At times building spaces or wooden structures that help me hold and hang these pieces in different ways, to see every possible movement, to see every step, even the ones that are just absent. Sorry, I need water. So looking at the full images of the studio setting for Oxten's portraits, I ask myself again, Like in the archives of the Gay Museum in Berlin, where am I? And as simple as this question might be, is one that haunts me in every work I make and every space I go. And it means different things. Sometimes I ask myself where I am in the work I'm making, if I can see any trace of myself in it, some traces of a history unique to me and not only the reflection of others and their histories. Sometimes it just means space, geography. Where am I? In the studio, at home, in Europe. And sometimes, most of the times, it's just an echoing question from someone else questioning why am I here in this place that I'm not expected to be. But if I try to answer the question of positioning myself within the logic of Muybridge's photo studio, I see myself in motion, moving between the different parts of the stage. Sometimes I am Oxden the horse, following the path in the west, every movement being recorded. I am also the artist behind the 24 cameras, designing and building the studio setting to understand my own work, my own path. Because in this studio setting, everything is Occident. Occident is the horse, Occident is the stage, and Occident is the land that they named for the stage. Occident is where we are meeting right now. In 2021, I was invited to make a work for an online platform in collaboration with the Columboscope Festival in Sri Lanka. I didn't know where to start, how to take that first step, as if moving my work to Sri Lanka carried the inevitable weight of crossing the same colonial paths that cut the oceans. In fact, Sri Lanka's colonial history has intersecting points with Brazil, both which, before being named, have been first colonized by the Portuguese. I decided then to work with a local writer and translator, Indrakanti Pereira, to look for a way to communicate through these violent shared histories. There are words in Sinhala today that still stem from Portuguese, so we put together a list of them and I wrote a poem, or rather descriptions of different scenes using only these words. The words ranged from everyday European objects and foods to military and clerical vocabulary. Going back and forth between me and Indrakanti, we tried to make sure that what I was hearing in those words was the same image that she was hearing. Bread, cheese, captain, compass, pistol, cross, bell, handkerchief, soldier, sainthood, among others. One of the first descriptions I wrote, which is also the title of the piece, was the master's shoes. Being both master and shoes, words from this Portuguese colonial vocabulary. Thinking of Audre Lorde, is it possible to use the master's shoes in order to meet each other outside the master's imaginary? Is it possible to walk in Occident's path without becoming a fundamental piece in the construction of the image of Occident? These are questions that have tormented me for the past decade. Questions that pushed me sometimes to make new work, sometimes to have an exhibition for my artist visa. Questions that I think why I'm here in my new studio at the Jan van Eyck in another European city, and which I have no answer for. Last year, I got my German citizenship. At that time, I started painting these small single tile pieces, which felt silly, almost an in-between exercise for glazing in the studio, something in between bigger projects. The paintings depicted my hand holding a printed paper with a star on it. I hold it in different ways. Sometimes it folds, bends. The shape of my hand and the star negotiate the surface. And when I finished it, after a few months, I decided to show them in an exhibition in Berlin. I connected them all and hanged them from the ceiling almost as party flags after the party is over. When I looked at them all together, they looked like a stop-motion film. And I titled the piece with a dictionary description of stop motion, which is to give animated figures the impression of movement, which also reminded me of Muybridge's book title, The Attitude of Animals in Motion. What is this kind of movement, or what is this impression of movement that marks time, space, and the body in the West? These are questions that I don't mean to answer, but that are present in different forms when I'm making work, when I'm thinking of Occident, when I'm living in the West, walking home, whatever that may be. Occident ambling from the first shot to the second. There's a person mounted on its back. They wear a hat, seemingly still from shot to shot, defined only by their silhouette. In the following pages of the book, we see Occident walking, ambling on a single foot, cantering, racking, trotting, galloping, leaping, performing an irregular gait, backing. It's all recorded by 24 cameras, each separated by 12 inches, like the months in a year, the hours in a day. Occident is always photographed full body in a profile, high contrast. It's right side to the cameras. Thank you.
I'm Kexin, and I
Thank you. So I can bring the mic if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll start. Lucas, that was a beautiful presentation. Thank you very much. There's a second part of this presentation that we will enjoy while having dinner. I wonder if you want to talk specifically about the things that you've put on the wall downstairs. I think as also a way of talking about the self-reflective moment you're going through here at the Jan van Eyck in the light of those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, that's like what I just read. Is I started writing this, so in when I arrived here, and then the pieces that we put in the cafe, I was doing them at the same time that I was writing the text. And like you say, I think there is this self-reflective moment of like, after this almost a decade working with this medium that has been like, I don't know, that helped me so much to think a lot of things. That's the ceramic tiling. It also like started haunting me of what are the limits of this medium and how can I go further with this? And now I'm looking back at it and trying to understand like how this, because I think, I mean, I work with text to think about things, but also with material, I guess, like, and the medium. So I'm trying to like re-understand this medium for myself. And then downstairs, there's this works on paper that I have been doing for the past months. And actually, like, I feel that these works on paper, they're kind of like trying to address similar questions that I have been thinking about my practice in terms of like how to negotiate shape and space and time in this one format, but in a way that is much more vulnerable also, because it's just pieces of paper together, basically. But it's like how to understand, I don't know, these questions that like sometimes for me they're very like difficult, but sometimes they're really also just very simple in this way of like, where am I? Like, what am I doing here in this space? And I think it's like these works on paper, they kind of like help me to just think these things in a way that for the moment I feel like that the ceramic tiling is not doing this. And I think that's why like I wanted to try to find a way to understand this in a different kind of space, which in this case somehow was Muybridge photo studio. Which is interesting now, like to think about it, like looking at the studio setting, while the studio here is being such a thing that has been like, I don't know, it's a thing to have a studio like this, but like, what does it mean to have a studio like this? I didn't build it, you know. I'm trying to understand what it is. So, yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very beautiful. I'm curious about your relationship to your writing practice and how you engage, or like how you share it more generally, because obviously when we're here, you have these kind of moments where we're sharing text, but like how do you share your text practice in an exhibition when you're showing sculptures, or do you share it at all? Because it's so beautifully formed, so it does feel like it's almost its own thing. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think usually actually, I don't know what starts for, like, usually I start from text, but the text like doesn't mean that it will be used as a work. It can also just be for myself. But then when it actually turns into something, like, I mean, I think like this text now I wrote in a way that it turned into something, and then I usually give this kind of like, it's a reading, basically. But I also like, early on in that work from the Schwules Museum, actually, like if you see in the middle of in front of the structure, there's a book. So like I was working on that book format, like also in the same time that I was doing the paintings, and that was together with drawings and writing, and that was the case for this exhibition. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like sometimes actually like I'm more like even sometimes more protective about the text, because I realize I put a lot of more time in this than in that. You know, it doesn't look like that sometimes. People think that's just like, that's more impressive, but like, and then sometimes just for myself, I don't know. But maybe not in the future. I'm not sure yet, actually.
Yeah, because it feels like research, but then you've like made it into this very like coherent piece. There's so much research in there, but then it's so coherent as well.
Yeah.
You know, like when I think of my own research, it's like all over the place.
Yeah.
And then, but it's really beautiful because you can communicate that to someone.
Yeah.
So it has this bridge to an audience, which is really nice.
I think it's also like writing in general. For example, like I have, when any work that I start making, it will always start with like writing titles and titles. And the titles, they are like me trying to understand that work, but they are really, you know, they become a kind of like poetry, like something until I find the right title. But it's just, I think it's like writing is always together. I think also the question just like language in general, because like there's so much of this work about also like moving here and then having to think in English. Like it's also something that I have like developed, is like a skill, right? Like I've been mastering this language, and then like this is what it's the same way that like before I came to Germany I wasn't painting, you know. So it's this like, what are these languages that are being developed, like, and am I just doing this because I'm here trying to communicate with the Occident? I'm not sure, you know, like, but it's happening, you know.
Yeah, I was wondering how it would be to listen to the same text but in Portuguese, where Ocidente, you know, just means something, and I guess in English it just sounds like a name.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And also like some of the texts I write only in Portuguese, and I, like my partner, he is native English speaker and he speaks Portuguese. I hope he's watching this, and like he translates, yeah. And then we work together with the translation. But most of them are, yeah, it's either Portuguese or English, I guess.
I see happy faces at least. Thank you so much, Lucas.
Thank you.
So now we're gonna go through a 4-course meal of the food scrap that I found in the compost in the Jan van Eyck garden. You can close your eyes. You can also look at me. Doesn't matter. First course. Appetizer. Lettuce, kale, red cabbage, topped with garlic skin, onion skin, seasoned with spring onion roots and coriander stems. Everything here reminds me of you. The crunch, the juice, the stems and roots, the plaque on your tooth, the food you consumed. I've been rubbing my claws while chewing on my straws. I've been waiting for the night to fall It's time to seek the traces of your aroma, your sweat, your mucus, and your saliva, for you to come near, to whisper in my ear, let's eat. Click my nose tip, tap my wet lips, pinch my hardened tits, drink my drip, take a sip. My broth is very thick, I promise to eat until I am sick. Second course, veggie stew. Leek roots, cabbage roots, celery, carrots, and zucchini. Just like how a nail pierces through, a drill drives a screw, a kid puts on a shoe, a spoon scoops the soup. I do the same as they do, messing with your hot stew. That's the passage I choose, the language I use to say I love you, to know you, to be inside of you, to become you, to digest you, to eat with your tongue, to breathe in your lungs, to come on your cream, to scream when you scream, to sleep in your sleep. It's a dream in a dream. Breath over breath over breath. It's death after life after death. Third course, sweet potato and potato skin, mushroom roots, bell pepper heads topped with parsley. Leash me, walk me in your park, choke me, blindfold me, make me bark. Heaven is the white light that is pitch dark. I can't see, I feel fine, I tore myself apart. Inside of you, I've become many of myself. I look at them from high above. I've become the gunk down your throat, the acid in your gall, the blackheads on your nose, the hairs on your toes. I've become the pimples on your chin, the goosebumps over the skin, the 1,000 itch from within. I've become the stardust in your eyes, the larva between your thighs, the newborn baby who asked, who am I? Fourth course, dessert. Banana peels, mint stems, red chili pepper, and a piece of napkin. I traveled through your systems, inch by inch. I kissed them, I swallowed them, wrapped them under my skin. It's your presence. Please leave me as how you enter, intrusive but tender, until it's too late to leave my chamber, to realize it's already rendered into a landscape with only me and you, the stars and the moon, into a dessert never too soon, 2 bites with 1 spoon, and a dinner at noon. Look, you flooded in my gut, clogged in my butt. You had a lucid dream in my blood. I need a scrub nitrogen in my drug. You gave my legs 10,000 taste buds. I feel loved. I feel loved. I feel loved. I feel loved. So I've been working with the compost because before coming here, I would really love to work on a project that is about anthropomorphizing certain animals that are neglected, or things or animals that we don't want to get reminded of or we are disgusted of. And coming here, I decided to work on something that is really local, which is the compost right here, and I can see it from my window every day. And every day from the kitchen, we throw away the food scrap, so it's always related to every day the food we eat. So I decided to work on the compost and observe the decomposers in the compost. So first, I want to show. Oh no! I want to show. I've been keeping a logbook of my observation. So every day I have this form that documents the temperature and moisture of that day, and my mood, and the food I eat from the kitchen, and what's been thrown away to the bin that is in action, and what is in the bin that you see a stone on top, which is things are getting processed there. So I observe both of the bins and who are there and what they are feeding on. And then I gather the menu from the kitchen every day, and I take pictures of the food I eat and the food scraps, and also how I taste the food and such. And thanks to Romy's macro lens, I got to see really little creatures through camera, and I want to show you some pictures. And thanks to this app called Picture Insect, I got to know which species they are, even though I had no idea how to pronounce the Latin name. This is a species of springtail. They are super tiny. This is another species of springtail. They jump. This is window gnats. They are everywhere. All kinds of spiders. They are mostly on the lid, not inside. And I think they are not decomposers because they eat the little decomposers. They hunt. And so I'm not sure if they are literally decomposers, but I'm just taking pictures of whatever I found that are moving. This is crane fly, which looks like mosquito, but it's not. Another shot because I think she's really beautiful. A vinegar fly or a fruit fly, of course, they're everywhere. All kinds of slug. This is another species which is more in the dirt that I have to dig out. This one before stays on the lid. And then, of course, earthworms, and these are, you have to dig it out and look it really inside of the dirt that you take from the inner layers of the compost. There's a lot of them, and these are the eggs of the earthworms. And this is a millipede, a woodlouse. So this is like my daily routine, and I've been keeping this practice for a month or so. And every week I thought I can make a small drawing just to embrace this approach of anthropomorphism and think together with the decomposers and think as if I am the decomposer, or to merge my narrative with their narrative and imagine what if I inhabit their bodies, what if they are me. So the first one is a sexy fruit fly. It's just my thought after the Christmas break in Florence. I ate so much food, and when I came here, the compost bin was really lonely and empty, so I thought of what if there's a fruit fly that is being horny and hunting for food, and then I illustrated food that I ate in Florence. So it's more like me keeping a diary at the same time drawing things that maybe can be conceptually like, I don't, like, it's just me keeping a diary, but then the output is drawing. And then the middle one is slugs mating. I found a slug in the kales we have been eating for many weeks. And then, yeah, the second day I found another slug in the compost after I throw away the first one. So I had this fantasy of them having this really intimate mating rituals. Third one is a mottled springtail that is trapped with her computer work. Was apparently my condition. The week before was really busy with computer work and design work. So it's illustrations of me and the decomposers fused together. And then I started thinking to build proximity and relationships from the compost to other things. And I started to compare other process to the composting process. The composting process is in the scale of a microorganism, and it has 4 phases apparently, and it's determined by its temperature. The temperature rises slowly and then reaches its peak and drops down. And then I think maybe it's also similar to the process of our cooking, which is within the scale of the transformation of matters. For example, if it's kale, we cook the kale, it is food. We throw the leftover, it is food scrap, and the food scrap becomes compost. Compost becomes good soil. That becomes good food. So everything here is also a cycle. And what if I can compare it to a meal structure, which is in the scale of a menu card from appetizer, first, second course, third course, and dessert, which is also starting with something that you have to get appetized, and then in the end is something sweet that rounds it up, and then the next day you're hungry again. And it's also very comparable maybe to this very visceral and internal scale that is within our body, which is about the food consumption. We get appetized, we eat, we digest, and we poop out. So I thought this process is also, of course, what is being digested in your body is very, very similar to what is happening in the compost. And I thought maybe it also can be compared to the process of sex, because when I research about these decomposers, what's fascinating about them is their mating rituals. And yeah, I just keep getting reminded of sex and reproduction a lot. And I thought maybe this composting process can be compared to 4 stages of sex. Apparently, I have to Google this. It's foreplay, plateau, I didn't know it, and orgasm and resolution. So I just put this process in different scale together, and then I thought about layers. So composting is not only a timely layer, which follows the sequence of temperature, but also it's a physical layer, and it's a lot of repetition. It's like food scrap, straw, or brown leaves, which gives a good balance of nitrogen and carbon. And then thinking about layer, I also thought about canon, which is a way, like a composition in the music, which is about you starting a melody and the second person imitates or repeats the same melody or the bass of the melody after a certain amount of a break, or 2 bars, one bar, and then the third person repeats the same process but after the second person. So I'm just going to show a little clip of this YouTuber explaining the canon. I think it's a great example.
The round is the most strict and simple version of a canon, known by us all from folk and child songs. It's called a round or an infinite canon because when you finish the melody, you can just start at the beginning again and go round and round and round. The entrances are usually marked with numbers above the stave. Row, row, row the boat gently down the stream. Row the boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 down the stream. Merrily, merrily, down the stream. Merrily, merrily, down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. The next kind of canon we need to talk about is the accompanied canon, where the imitated melodies are accompanied by a bass line. It happens that one of the most famous canons ever written is an accompanied canon and needs hardly any introduction. We don't know when or for what occasion Johann Pachelbel wrote this canon in D major for 3 violins and a bass. We can see and hear that each imitation of the melody enters 2 bars apart.
So this is the very classic example that I just borrowed. So I thought, okay, these different processes and then the layers of compost and the layers of a canon, how can I make something out of these thoughts? What if I can layer also the process of food consumption, the process of digestion, the process of sex, in a way that, you know, when the second step happens, when the food scraps process happens, the first step, food, comes in, because apparently food scrap is some creatures' food. And what if orgasm happens when foreplay is also happening? I don't know exactly what it means, but I just thought, maybe what if I layer them? And what if I can also layer this in this direction, that cooking process can be also composting process, sex can be food consumption, digestion can be composting, whatever, like different layering. So I think, yeah, that this kind of thoughts gives me urge to experiment with this text and the singing, which is a small experiment that I did from last week. I thought of writing a text following the sequence of a menu card, but then I'd also talk about sex and digestion and composting, of course. And the singing is just a test of, yeah, what if I layer the voices and sing about a perspective of the composer. Yeah, so this is the project for now. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was wondering about the ASMR layer. How does it connect or come in? How did you develop this idea?
I just had this idea last week. I forgot how it came in to my mind. I guess it's different elements of things that I see, like, for example, mukbang, which is a food live eating show online that people really amplify the sound of them eating food. Mukbang is a Korean word, and this genre has been really popular the last 10 years. I've been watching that a lot, and that is closely related to sexualized figures online, like celebrities. So I thought it's a good thing to have different, like ASMR is a format that I can borrow that can amplify the sexuality I want to talk about, and the food and the visceral feeling, yeah. And then the sound of the compost, of course, it's, I don't know, I just want to amplify and make it really intimate to the audience, because yeah, as I said at the very beginning, I want to work on something that we get disgusted of, but I want to bring it closer. Simply just, I want people to rethink about garbage and like this kind of reaction. Why do we have this reaction, and what is our kind of proximity and relationship we can build to it? Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very hot. Um, I was wondering, I really liked your personification in your drawings of this decomposer that you're, and I was wondering if you want to still like develop your project by personificate these living things in you, or is there another characters to sing together with you? I don't know. Like, what? How do you see yourself to develop this project with this things like?
Yeah. I think it's just in general a very good practice that I draw every day, and every week I have this motivation to produce a figure, almost like having working as a manga person, that I need to create a new figure to make a story. I like this practice, but I need to think how it can come in with other things together. It's definitely helping me writing, like thinking of different perspectives. Like, what if I am a springtail? What if I am a slug having sex, having both genders? What it is like? Yeah, it's kind of helping me write, and also I think the writing also feeds in a way reversely to the drawing to make the storyline, or yeah. I think it comes into the story, yeah, in some way. But like in the end, at the final product, I don't know. Maybe they can be just drawings as how they are. Maybe I can also make a comic book in the end, yeah.
Thank you, Kexin. It's so nice to see what happened and the result of it. I was just asking, because now you're giving us the background of the performance, right? How the performance came to be. If you would have to perform this, I suppose that background you wouldn't do, right?
No.
It would just be the performance.
Exactly.
So basically what we're looking at is the culmination of everything that happened and your time here that then culminated in the performance, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's super strong. If you only see the performance itself, the performance has all those elements already in it, in fact, without it being very discursive, as if afterwards we are talking about it. Takes a little bit the myth away, in fact.
Yeah.
I think the performance is super strong on itself, having all those elements that you've been talking about already in it. I just wanted to relay that feeling.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, for me, it's incomplete. It's just a starting point. So I want to talk about, of course, my research. And to me, it's just a test out of how it can feel and how it can reach the audience. Apparently, I am so used to writing songs and raps, like rhymes. But then I am more these days I want to practice a more experimental writing. Like, what if it doesn't rhyme? What if it doesn't fit in the structure of a canon? What if I shout instead of ASMR? Yeah, different kinds of writing practice. Like, this is really rhyming and everything is in harmony, but I think there's a lot more to...
Yeah, but it will always be in the legacy of performing, right? Because this is where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Cool. Happy that that's the case.
How do you think about the humor in your work, or is just something that comes out? Like, this is something that you sometimes think about, or is just...
I need to be pleased. That's the first thing in me making things in general. Like, I need to feel entertained, and that's the way I entertain myself. Yeah. It's like playing music when you're doing things. Like, I need that joy, I think.
Uh-huh, yeah. That was nice. Thank you. Thank you, Lucas and Kexin. We have more next week.